The young man's father says she drove his son into a mental institution. Plus, ASAP Rocky's defense calling a friend to testify that it was the accuser, Relly, who was the actual aggressor. Also this morning, we're spotlighting testimony from the sister of slain hairstylist Fabio Sementilli, how she describes Monica in the days after Fabio's murder. It's all next right here on Opening Statements. And welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Ted Rollins in for Julie Grant. Glad to have you along with us as we kick off another busy week here at Court TV. Later this hour, we're going to head to Tennessee for more of that testimony in the Boswell trial. They actually worked over the weekend there, so we're going to get you caught up. Also, we've got updates in the California trials. It's a busy day. Of course, this show is all about getting you ready for the day ahead. And that starts with our daily docket.
Not only was the defendant having an affair with Baker, but they were also swinging with other people. Her older daughter, Jessica, who you'll hear from, found Baker sleeping in the defendant's bed.
Here's a look at some of the cases we're following today on Court TV. In California, the state's case resumes in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for Monica Sementilli. That will start at noon Eastern time. Also in California, the defense case resumes in the trial against rapper ASAP Rocky. That at 1:30. And in Tennessee, testimony is resuming this hour in the baby Evelyn murder trial against mother Megan Boswell. And that is where we will start. A former TBI special agent is going to return to the stand today. In about 45 minutes to an hour, they'll get things running in Tennessee. He testified along with some other law enforcement agents on Saturday. They worked on Saturday. Most of them interviewed Megan at some point in their investigation, and their eyebrows raised when they talked to this young woman about her missing child. They talked about several pieces of evidence, including an apartment application that Special Agent David Gratz received signed by Hunter Wood. Let's start things off this morning with a look at what happened on Saturday.
That was Christmas Day, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then after Christmas Day, do you communicate with,
He won't talk to me.
But
On New Year's Eve, and sort of on New Year's, I guess, me and him argue back and forth.
did you ever call him and say, hey, where's Evelyn? It's been
I'll try to call and he won't answer.
When they say that you dropped the baby off at his parents,
His grandparents.
His grandparents?
Me and him sit outside, we didn't go in.
Did you date anybody during that time after you left?
Hunter, but I didn't really tell him if either were into it.
Okay, so you went from Ethan to Hunter. Okay, so the last time you seen your daughter was sometime around Christmas, the day after that you dropped him off. You went and he didn't want to let you talk with her, be with her, or anything. Was there a confrontation or anything? He just basically ran you off, or say, hey, you're not talking to my
I think
baby?
he just basically ran me off.
Okay.
Did she ever explain to you why she felt like it was okay to leave Evelyn with essentially a stranger to Evelyn?
She indicated that she was, I recall her using the words worn out,
Okay.
that Evelyn was attached to her at the hip and she needed a break, that she had taken care of Evelyn for a year and she felt like it was time for Mr. Perry to step up, and that she had also been taking care of her father or stepfather's children, other children in the home, and she was tired.
Did she indicate whether or not she could handle Evelyn herself?
She indicated she was just getting too much to handle. Yes, ma'am.
Ask if you can identify it.
Yes, I recognize this.
Okay. What is it?
This is an application for applying for a residence at the Overlook Apartments.
Okay. And can you tell us why you looked at Overlook Apartments?
We were given information that the defendant had applied to live there with her boyfriend.
Okay. Her boyfriend?
Hunter Wood.
Did you talk to the defendant about who the third occupant was going to be?
Yes, I did.
Did the defendant say the third occupant was going to be Evelyn Boswell?
No.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
The defendant told us that at that time she was pregnant and the third occupant was for the unborn baby.
All right, that was some of the testimony from this weekend. Again, they worked on Saturday up in Tennessee. Let's talk about this case with retired criminal defense attorney Mr. Kirk Nermy is with us this morning, and former director of the Department of Family and Children Services in the state of Georgia, Tom Rawlings. Gentlemen, good morning to you. What does this apartment application indicate to you? Tom, to you first.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, number one, she said she was pregnant. I'm not sure that was ever the case. Never really found that out. But more than importantly than that, she apparently didn't expect to have Evelyn with her. You're the sole mother, the sole custodian of a 15-month-old child. When you go apply for an apartment, you say that the child's not going to be with you. I mean, just something is obviously off there.
Kirk, and that was evident over the weekend with some of these law enforcement agents that interacted with her mom. Something was very off. It's even Megan's emotions, basically unfazed. Let's take a listen to a bit of that, of her talking to this investigator. And the guy says, listen, where's your kid? You don't even seem to care. Take a listen and we'll get your response.
So where do you think she's at? I don't know. You seem totally unfazed by this. That tells me that you know where your baby's at. No, I don't. Megan, I've been doing this a long time. I've talked to a lot of mothers. I've talked to a lot of girls. Okay? What you're telling me very well could be partial truth. But like I said, there's a piece that you're not telling me.
Kirk, it doesn't look good for Megan.
It doesn't, Ted. And, you know, ultimately what we're seeing over the past couple of days of this testimony is the state presenting a pretty good portrait of a young woman who is very mentally unstable and who is lying at will, if you will, in order to cover up what she's done. And these lies are starting to, lies don't age well, and they start to turn really bad in trial. We're seeing that, and we're seeing the mental instability behind it, the motivated lies, the chaos, the application is true. Obviously, she's not expecting Evelyn with her. So you're seeing a really portrait of an unstable young woman, and you're making it really clear to the jury that she was the one, in fact, that killed her own daughter.
Tom, she was 17 when she had her daughter. With your experience, how does a baby like this fall through the cracks? I mean, it seems like in this case it was because no one was notified, and without knowledge, I guess the state can't come in and do anything, no matter what state it is. What's your overall thought of this case, given your experience?
Sure. From a Child Protective Services standpoint, Ted, I'm concerned that, number one, Megan was actually in foster care when she was pregnant with this child, is my understanding. There's some testimony from her former foster parent that she was 4 months pregnant when she came into foster care at about age 17. I don't know why she came into foster care. I think it's a really interesting thing we need to find out. The problem, of course, is that I guess she probably aged out of foster care at 18 and had the child. And I think the question is, why did the Child Protective Services, Tennessee Department of Children's Services, not follow up and say, what's going on with your child? You were in a bad situation. You were in foster care yourself with this baby or while pregnant with this child. Why didn't they follow up? I'm not sure. It's a really good question.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. In fact, if someone may have followed up. They may have seen what her friend saw. Megan's friend testified that, she went to a restaurant and the baby was obviously not being cared for. Take a listen.
Who was there when you went to Chili's that day?
Me, Megan, and Evelyn.
Okay. Anyone else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you sit at a table or a booth?
Booth.
Okay. And did you sit beside anyone?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so Megan and Evelyn were on one side of the table and you were on the other?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your impression of Evelyn that day?
She was dirty, and I could smell her across the table.
Can you tell us how? Can you describe it for us?
Her face and hands were dirty, and her clothes were dirty.
Kirk, it's a heartbreaking just picture that this jury is seeing, and a jury is always going to blame mother. And there seems to be a mountain of evidence compiling here as this trial from day to day. From a defense perspective, where do you see this going?
Well, there's not too many places it can go, right? I used the term before. You probably heard me say long-form guilty plea. This is what this really is, right? Miss Boswell, probably, if there ever was a plea offer, she's not willing to accept it. So you're defending the Constitution, not the client. There's not a lot of avenues for the defense to go, right? You paint this picture. You see this girl who's clearly not equipped. She doesn't reach out for services. She needs mental health help. You just showed the clip of the friend describing the state of affairs. No one intervened. That's the sad part. Going back to your previous question, there had to be some reason for the state services to start intervening here. No one made mention of that, and you can really, the picture is very clear, and there's not really a place for the defense to go, as it were.
Tom, again, leaning into your experience, is there a mistrust in the system, or is there what? Because it seems as though this young mother and the child would have had interactions. We saw the example of the friend at Chili's. Okay, this is another young guy. What does it take for someone to pick up the call, and why do you think babies fall through the cracks in these horrible cases that end up on court TV?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Ted. I think actually one of her friends, I can't remember which one, testified that she was aware that that Megan was not treating the child well. Similar testimony to what we just heard. And she said she did not call it in because she had had a similar experience with Child Protective Services and didn't want to mess up Megan's life in that way. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that the only way that you're going to get help for a child is to call Child Protective Services. It's great that you don't want them involved with your friend's life. We understand that. But otherwise, bad things can happen, as happened with Evelyn here, unfortunately.
Yeah, well said. That you have to look at the child more so than the parent. Tom Rawlings, thank you for your insight. Appreciate it. Enjoy your Monday. Kirk's going to stick around. Coming up next on Opening Statements.
She goes, Zia, like Auntie, Daddy's dead. Someone killed Daddy, and it was blood everywhere, and she started breaking down, and then I'm breaking down, and I'm like, this can't be true.
Emotional testimony from the sister of the victim in the celebrity stylist murder trial. She'll return to the stand today. Plus, an arrest in connection to the death of a Kansas City sports reporter covering the Super Bowl. Stay with us. A true crime tragedy out of Tennessee.
This case is unlike anything I've ever been involved in.
A 15-month-old Evelyn Boswell goes missing and is later found dead on her family's compound.
Her own teenage mother charged with little Evelyn's murder.
This little girl was let down by everyone in her life who was supposed to protect her.
All right, it's Monday morning after the Super Bowl, and a couple of potential legal issues are going to come out of the Super Bowl. One, you got to wonder, is Drake going to sue Kendrick Lamar after that performance in front of the world, performing Not Like Us? We'll find out. Also, you have a reporter who ended up dead covering the big game. It's all trending in true crime. Let's start with that. Mazzano was in New Orleans covering the Super Bowl for Telemundo last Wednesday. He was found dead in a hotel room near New Orleans, just outside. The following day, Danette Colbert, this woman, was arrested in connection to the reporter's death. Mazzano's credit card, cell phone were found by police at her home. During a press conference Friday, police talked about Colbert's criminal history, which includes drugging and theft.
It's important to note that Ms. Colbert's criminal history does include 2 instances where she drugged a victim and stole his access device cards and things of that nature. One was in 2022 in Nevada, where she was actually charged with introducing a substance, a foreign substance. And the other one was in Jefferson Parish. I believe it was 2 years ago. She plays a confidence game. She's definitely a career criminal. All her crimes are against persons such as access device frauds, simple robberies, thefts, things of that nature.
Police still waiting for the autopsy results to determine if it was a homicide. Let's talk about what happened to this reporter who he just recently lost his wife. He has a daughter. She was in a car accident. He goes down to New Orleans, ends up with this woman. Let's talk about it with former prosecutor and SLED agent Tommy Pope is with us this Monday morning. Retired criminal defense attorney Kirk Nermy's still with us, and retired NYPD detective Mike Alcazar. Mike, this case, the autopsy results have to be very important here, but then that connection of trying to prove that the victim in this case didn't allegedly, let's assume there's drugs in his system, didn't consume those drugs voluntarily. What are you looking for as an investigator?
We're going to look for things on the scene, like the crime scene, any kind of like evidence, any kind of maybe drinkware that the suspect might have handled. Any kind of like drugs that were located on the scene that might have been on the suspect's person. You know, very often these things happen. These perpetrators are not chemists. They make these cocktails of death to hopefully they were hoping to knock out the person and then rob them. And unfortunately, you know, they overdosed the victim. So a lot to process in the crime scene.
Let's talk a little Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Tommy, I know you're a big rap fan and you're caught up on the latest beefs going on. This is an interesting story. Not Like Us is the song where Kendrick Lamar basically calls Drake a pedophile. I mean, the lyrics are clear as day. Before the Super Bowl, when it was announced that Kendrick Lamar was going to be performing at the Super Bowl, Drake files this lawsuit against the record label that represents Kendrick and Drake, actually, basically to say, dude, do not do this in front of the world on the biggest stage. And what happens? We all watched and waited, and sure enough, Kendrick Lamar sings the song, lyrics and all, at one point stares at the camera and says Drake's name. Is this protected through art, or is this a classic defamation suit, Tommy?
I think this is called Lawyer Full Employment Day, because I think we'll have a number of attorneys that will get involved in this. I don't see how they don't pursue it now at this point, and I think it can't be inadvertence. It's got to be intent at this point. Again, that's not my area of expertise, be it rap or defamation, but I think there's a good chance we'll see this. It's kind of like People's Court on steroids.
Yeah, and Kirk, from a legal standpoint, that warning shot with the first lawsuit saying don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, does that matter now when he did do it? And what about the stage? You can't get any bigger, can you, with the millions and millions of people worldwide watching this, and one person basically calls another a pedophile, which is the worst thing you can say.
Yeah, you can't really, there's no obligation to sue based on that letter, but when you make it public and things of that nature, and then it happens, you've almost, at least in terms of your reputation, you've almost committed to doing it, right? Because you've put that out there, it's public, and if you don't sue, then it looks like because one of the defenses to defamation is truth, so you're saying, okay, well, hey, I'm not going to challenge this because of what could come out. So now Drake is really, I think, in terms of the court of public opinion, obligated, if you will, or certainly going to be motivated to pursue this lawsuit.
Yeah, and Kendrick Lamar was obligated to perform it and won a Grammy. That's the thing. This was such a popular song. It'd be one thing if it was just a one-off, but he did. Other trending news, the defense case in the hip-hop star A$AP Rocky kicked off on Friday. They'll continue today. The defense called another member of the A$AP Artist Collective as their first witness, who was there during the meetup with the defendant in question. And Darrell Ephraim was the alleged victim in this case. The witness, Jamel Phillips, pointed to Ephraim and said it wasn't the defendant, it was Ephraim who was the aggressor in the heated exchange. Take a listen.
In that small clip there, do you see Rocky holding an object that looks like fire?
Yes.
Okay. And what was that in fact?
That was his prop. I seen really grabbing Rocky, almost picking him up off the ground. And with that happening, his pants started falling. The Rocky pants started falling.
Who's the aggressor in this encounter?
Really?
Okay. Is that why you told Rocky to leave?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever see Rocky point that object, just a prop gun towards you, at Relly at all during that parking garage encounter?
No.
As the defense case continues later today, we should be asking, will A$AP Rocky take the stand in his own defense? Kirk Nurmi, when you have the friend taking the stand and kind of telling your story for you, do you have to take the stand? Or a guy like this who has Rihanna's in the front row behind the defense table in this courtroom, does a celebrity like this have to take the stand in a case like this?
Does he have to? No. Should he? Probably, with a big caveat, if he can remain calm and connect to the jury. Because let's face it, likability is also important in this case. And the way the alleged victim, Mr. Relly, testified, he was disconnected, he was fighting with the judge, things of that nature. If A$AP Rocky can get on the stand and be professional, respectful of the court, understand that he's not in charge and answer the question, that's going to go a long way in his defense. Also, I think there's some factual things regarding the defense theme that Mr. Relly is out for money, what have you, that probably only A$AP Rocky can testify to, because that gets their theme out there in a way. And I don't know, looking at it from the other side, you know, Tommy may have some other ideas, but I don't know that there's a great avenue for the prosecutor to attack A$AP Rocky. We have everything on tape. We have the alleged victim's testimony, which isn't strong. So I think it would serve Mr. Rocky well to testify.
Mike Alcazar, the defense here says, because there's a video of it, it wasn't a real gun. It's a starter pistol that he would carry around like as protection. The problem is the weapon wasn't found, and there's video and two different stories of whether this was a real gun or a starter pistol. What's your take on the gun in this story? Because I've never heard of it, but maybe this is something. Is this something that people do? They carry around a gun that actually isn't real, just for protection to scare people?
Yeah, no, I've never heard that. It's highly suspicious that he would carry a prop gun. It's also suspect, although it is also suspect that the victim, you know, recovered spent shells later and brought it to the police, while the police already processed the crime scene and found no spent shells. So it's definitely a tricky case. It's a lot of evidence that they have to process and see if they can link it to a gun, which I believe they did. So yeah, no, to answer your question, it's unusual that someone would carry a prop gun. I mean, that's very weird.
Tommy, with your prosecutor hat on, would you want your chance at A$AP Rocky on the stand?
I think going back to what Kirk said, since according to what I have ammo for cross-examination, I'd be curious if there's anything admissible. Maybe he had a prior gun charge or something of that nature, that the probative value would outweigh the prejudicial. But otherwise, I agree. From the beginning, this is not gone well for the plaintiff side or the prosecution side. And I think if the ASAP Rocky can take the stand, as Kurt said, remain calm and not have any bad baggage. I will say the starter pistol, carrying a fake pistol to try to deter people is a recipe for disaster. Nothing worse than introducing a gun into a situation and not having a real gun.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, does it? Hey, yeah, that could turn real bad real fast.
Yeah.
All right, stick around. We need a break. Still to come on opening statements.
He carefully explained everything that he needed to share with her about the insurance and stock options.
And at some point after they left, the defendant say anything to you?
She said that she was going to get a family lawyer in case they're screwing her.
Yeah, we're spotlighting testimony from Fabio Sementilli's family members as court resumes later today in the celebrity stylist murder trial. And will the jury be swayed by all the lies from defendant Megan Boswell testimony to begin in the baby Evelyn murder trial later this hour? Stay with us.
Tab 2.
This morning, we are spotlighting emotional testimony from the family in the celebrity stylist murder trial. The older sister of the victim is returning to the stand today. Continuing direct examination, Mariella Sementilli is testifying about the heartless way the defendant acted in the days after Fabio's death. Mariella says Monica Sementilli shut out Fabio's family and friends, but allowed one guest by the name of Robert Baker to hang around.
How is it that you came into contact with the defendant?
She worked in a clothing boutique 3 doors down from the salon Modelli.
Okay. And at that time, Fabio was married, correct?
Yes, he was.
And had a son?
Yes.
How is it that you learned about your brother's murder?
I answered the call, and it was my niece, Jessica, yelling, and it was breaking up. And she, it was breaking up, and it was Monica calling, saying, they killed Fabio, they killed Fabio. And then the phone was cracking up, and then I was like, it doesn't even sound like her. I'm like, this is a crazy joke. And then Jessica came on the phone. She goes, Zia, like Auntie, Daddy's dead. Someone killed Daddy. They were constantly reaching out if she needed anything. And that same day I said, maybe, there are 3 girls by themselves in the house. Maybe you can get a security guard or someone to help or replace the DVR or some security.
You said that?
Yes, I did.
Who did you say that to?
All 3 of them.
And what, if anything, did anybody respond?
I was stopped before I can even finish my sentence. Monica said, no, absolutely not. I'm fine. We're going to be fine. So the 4 of us followed basically Monica. She went into a dark living room, sat on the couch, and then Baker sat in front of her on an ottoman. And then I just found a spot to sit next to her on the right and Deb on the left. And with what Deb had said to me, that we got to get rid of this guy, everybody's looking, I whispered into Monica's ear. I go, who is this guy? Like, everybody's looking at you. Everybody's watching what's going on in Italian. Because I didn't want to embarrass her or him or my brother. Like, this is embarrassing.
At the 1-month memorial, is that like a tradition?
Yes.
All right. And did the defendant come to Toronto for that along with Jessica?
Yes, that's right. And I had some other guests as well. On that particular day, we had gone outside for smoke and asking her how things are going. And she's like, I'm sick and tired of this people coming in and out and all these people in my house. Just leave me alone. If I want to I'm going to I'm a big-ass girl. I wish they would leave me alone.
Damning testimony potentially from the sister. Again, she'll be back on the stand today. Still with us, former prosecutor /agent Tommy Pope, retired criminal defense attorney Kirk Dermy, and retired NYPD detective Mike Alcazar. Mike, this was a case where you had a murder in the house. Immediately, they're onto this Robert Baker character. Baker would say, hey, I did this by myself, but then the co-conspirator is found. He does point the finger at Monica as the ringleader. Baker's the lover who showed up at the wake. How do you parse this out from an investigative standpoint? And it did take a while, but now here we are and Monica's on trial.
Yeah, I would definitely entertain the murder for hire theory, and now we have these two suspects in the box in the interrogation room. That's key for prosecution. We want to get their statements, even though Baker is denying it, but the other guy's admitting it. It's definitely damning interrogation information that the prosecutors can work with.
Tommy, how important is the family members who are witnesses to the behavior of the defendant after a murder, like we're hearing from the sister?
I think it cuts both ways. I think first you got to see at this stage in the trial, is the jury believing more likely than not that she did? Because people grieve different ways. I've had sexual assault victims that giggle on the stand because of nervousness. And, you know, even like I'm tired of people in and out of the house, you know, in another circumstance, you know, in a different context, that wouldn't be unusual. You know, you're ready to grieve in private. And so I think the question is going to be what lens the jury is viewing these statements through. And if they believe that she is connected, then, you know, it's very damning.
That's a good word, lens. Kirk, the lens of our Court TV audience usually is judging the defendant, and I think she did it. You know, but a jury is different. Someone who is on jury duty, who's taking this very seriously, they're coming in looking for truth. And then, so someone like this, to Tommy's point, can cut both ways. A sister who is trying to help the state's case. What's your overall take on the evidence that we've seen so far and this case?
You know, ultimately, I think the rubber's going to meet the road with these co-conspirators, right? I mean, Tommy's right. When we have evidence like this, if you feel that the family member's supposed behavior, people grieve differently, but if you feel like she's involved, you're going to use that information to begin to tell yourself a story. Although jurors are looking for facts, one of the ways they do that is through the story, so they start telling themselves a story that supports the facts. This becomes damning information, but really, ultimately, the rubber meets the road with the co-conspirators. You've got people who committed murder saying she was involved. Is there real evidence that she was involved or that she was a victim in this? And that is ultimately going to be the ultimate, when we talk about the facts, finding those facts and rendering a verdict that the jury's going to have to do. That's really where the focus is going to be.
Mike, for an investigator, behavior after an event is critical, is it not?
No, absolutely. You know, they could be cool customers. They could be psychopaths. I don't know these people. I don't know this guy Baker, but, you know, to attend memorials and not wanting security is definitely suspicious and something an avenue would definitely investigate and follow up on.
Tommy, prosecutors, they lean into this type of testimony because, to Kirk's point, if you're a juror leaning one way or another, this is the stuff that puts you over the edge, right? You need the meat and potatoes, but this is the stuff that turns a juror's mind, because it's like, oh yeah, and the way she was acting after the murder.
Yeah, you know, they're watching in the courtroom, they're watching her tears and whether they're real or they're fake, and so the jury's ultimately you know, analyzing not only the facts, but I think at this point it puts them to an emotional. You know, we've used words like hate or, you know, things of that nature. I think they start resenting her, you know, based on this and the way she acted, or the fact that guy's in your house right after he's killed the husband, it's at a minimum poor judgment and a maximum callousness. And so I think that's exactly why the prosecution's putting it up. I think obviously it's got enough of a factual basis that the court's allowing it in, but I think it's really pushing on the emotional buttons of the jury as much as the factual buttons.
Yeah, and family members know. Let's face it, they're around, and their radar is up right away after something tragic like this happens. Sometimes they're wrong, but a lot of times they're right. Mike Alcazar, thank you for your valuable time. Kirk and Tommy are going to stick around for a bit. Coming up, we're moments away from testimony resuming in the baby Evelyn murder trial. We'll take you to Tennessee once they get up and running, and we'll talk about it next. A true crime tragedy out of Tennessee.
This case is unlike anything I've ever been involved in.
A 15-month-old Evelyn Boswell goes missing and is later found dead on her family's compound.
Her own teenage mother charged with little Evelyn's murder.
This little girl was let down by everyone in her life who was supposed to protect her.
Evelyn. Hi. My mom took her to a campground in a silver camper, and if they don't go tonight, I'm going to go find her myself.
Megan concocted a story. She told all kinds of different stories, depending on the person that she was talking to.
It doesn't mean she's a murderer. I just want her back. That's all I want.
That sweet little baby. Testimony is going to resume soon in the baby Evelyn murder trial in Tennessee against mother Megan Boswell. On Friday, the jury heard from Randy Wood, Hunter Wood's father. Hunter Wood is the alleged father of baby Evelyn. His dad revealed some shocking information that Hunter has now been staying in a mental hospital because of this case.
Now, your son Hunter, does he still live with you?
No, he started living with his mother, but he's at a hospital at the moment.
Okay, he's at a hospital. Where is he in a hospital?
Marion, Virginia.
All right. Is that a mental hospital?
Yes.
How long has he been there?
2 months.
Okay. What, have you been up there to see him at that facility?
Yes.
What is his mental status this time?
Well, some days he's pretty decent. Other days he don't know who I am.
Would he be able to come into this courtroom and testify?
No.
Okay. You mentioned that he'd been there for about 2 months.
Yes.
Had he had mental health problems prior to that?
Yes.
Okay. When did he, if you know, when did he start having mental health problems?
Well, when he got accused of being a baby killer.
Okay, what's this strange part of the case here? We know that Megan has lied repeatedly to investigators, to everybody. And then you have this weird curveball that the jury was exposed to on Friday with Randy in a mental hospital. Randy is the dad. Hunter Wood in a mental hospital. He's the father. And he doesn't recognize his own father when he comes to visit him. Let's talk more about it. Criminal defense attorney Kirk Nierme and former prosecutor Tommy Pope. Kirk, what do you think of this?
You know, it paints an even more damning picture of Megan, right? She's lying for convenience. We don't know who's the father of this child. What is she, maybe this young man feels guilt that he wasn't able to protect Evelyn. There's lots of things going on here, but it just deepens the picture of pathology that we're seeing behind Miss Boswell and is going to make the jury despise her more and more.
Tommy, any chance that the jury takes some sort of leap and thinks, well, if Dad can't remember his dad and he's in a mental hospital, maybe he did it?
I think evidentiary-wise, it's probably a stretch. I think that I go with Kurt that it really just shows the destructive nature of her lies. I was thinking, we talked earlier about rap stars being accused of pedophiles. The only thing probably equally bad would be if you were a baby killer. And so clearly, he had no mental health issues purportedly before this. And then this starts where she's just recklessly throwing out any story. He's got the child, the child's with the mother, the grandmother, wherever. I think it's very destructive. And I think, as Kurt said, that it's another layer of the nature of this defendant that kind of like we were talking last session about the family members in the other case. I think it's another layer of that jury to start thinking not only have you taken a child, you're destroying other lives. And I think the dad presented well. He, sounds like he's from up there in Tennessee, and I think he related well to the jury.
Yeah, he seems like somebody who is hurt as well. His son is now struggling, and that, you're right, that allegation is the worst, that you're a baby killer. And these are young people, Kirk. How does does her age help her in a case like this? Sometimes, would you get a juror or two that feels empathy for the defendant? Oh, she's so young and she was only 17 when she, et cetera, or does that go out the window when mom is accused of killing her own baby?
I think that goes out the window when mom's accused of killing her own baby. You might have cases where a defendant's age plays in their favor, what have you, right? But this is over the top. And again, going back to what we're saying earlier, you have all these lies, the multitude of lies, right? And they're not aging well, and the destructive capacity she is having on other people's lives. Whatever sympathy that might be garnered for that, and of course jurors are instructed not to make their decision based on sympathy, but any sympathy garnered through her age is going to be eviscerated by a lot of this testimony. They're really painting her out to be a very destructive force on this planet.
Here's Megan's father talking about his daughter and her lies.
I asked her numerous times.
Okay. And what did she tell you?
She kept coming up with different stories and different lies.
Okay. Well, what was she telling you?
First, it was Ethan had her. First, let me back up, I'm sorry. Hunter's mom was watching her. And then she come off with Ethan had her. And after it went on for a while, I said, I'm going to do something about this. Well, she told me that Ethan wouldn't give her back. I said, hey, let's go get an attorney. I said, he can see his daughter, but he's not taking her.
It's such a convoluted, and she's the source of all of these lies, Tommy, and jury. This is going to be very apparent to a jury. This might be a scenario where it's a very, very quick deliberation, because it seems to be piling and piling and piling. As a prosecutor, how do you make sure you still move forward and don't take it for granted when you have a very, very strong case? Because you never know.
I was going to say, I think you have to be methodical without gilding the lily. You don't need to go over the top. I thought, the fact that the father of the defendant is going to get to the bottom of it tells you, it's another one of those ripples we talked about people that are injured by this. It's interesting, too. I'm waiting to see the defense, and Kurt would know more about this than I would, but, is there some kind of argument for postpartum, depression or something? I was thinking about the mitigation, and that might be a possibility.
Yeah, it might be. We'll see. I don't think you throw a pathological liar, a young one, up on the stand. She's only 19 at this point. While we're going to see it play out, the bottom line is that little girl, Evelyn, her face, the video of her, it's just heartbreaking every time you see it. And she is the victim here in this mess.